She takes a certain position and asks to look more closely at her actions. She throws a shot and it stops at 10 meters. This act greatly shocks the guy, and he asks for forgiveness for doubting her. The guys who were also at the stadium also noticed that the girl threw a man's cannonball 10 meters. In an instant, a crowd of guys gathered around the little girl and told her all sorts of compliments. One of them even asked to train him, but the girl gently refused him. She explained this by saying that she already had someone to train and glanced at Batten. He first wanted to try as his instincts suggested and see what would come of it. The main character gathered all his strength and pushed the cannonball with a terrifying expression on his face. But since he didn't know how to do this at all, it fell right next to the guys who were standing very close. The guys immediately laughed cruelly at the main character, not understanding how one could be so askew. Loaf sweated a little and was disappointed because he missed greatly. The girl yelled at those guys, and they immediately went to another part of the stadium. And she advised Batten not to be upset because he needed more practice. The main character has already suspected a confusion in the system because he throws very badly. His thoughts were interrupted by a girl with blue hair who was explaining how to get into a throwing position. She told him to feel her hand and imagine it was a real cannonball. The guy tried to drive away all dirty thoughts because they were just training. Noodles noticed these movements and asked his girlfriend what was going on there. She replied that the little one would take care of him, and Batten was about to make another throw. He remembered all the tips he received from his coach, concentrated, and threw the cannonball. The core made a characteristic sound, which attracted the attention of all the people in the stadium. Mentally, the main character called those guys pimps and began to be proud of himself. At that moment, a board with a task called Sniper appeared in front of him. He wondered why he needed accuracy when putting the shot, because it was better to improve the strength and range of the throw. After studying all the conditions of the task, he began to understand some things, and it was visible on his face. This task was open not because Batten threw a cannonball, but because he hit one cannonball into another. The main character tried again to hit another core, and the hit was counted. Next, he wanted to designate the lawn as the target, not the shot put. As soon as the cannonball fell on the grass, the hit was counted, and Batten realized that even a child could complete this task. Then he decided to act even more boldly and designate the entire territory of the academy as a target. Alas, the hit did not count, and the main character realized that the system was not so stupid. Since there were no other ways to bypass the system, the guy continued to constantly throw cannonballs onto the grass. Other guys noticed this and already assumed that Batten had autism. But his monotonous throwing was interrupted by the little one and suggested that he continue training. He immediately raised his head and realized that he had completely forgotten that he was training. As Batten walked to the throwing area, he realized that it was pointless to throw shot after shot just for the sake of improving accuracy, because it was much more fun to do it by throwing the ball into the basket. In addition, after always completing the task, the main character will shoot three-pointers better than CAD sleeves. He will even have a chance of winning the basket throwing competition, and given his hand speed, he will be able to win at least a national tournament. Suddenly it dawned on Batten that the best place to complete the sniper mission would be an arcade basketball machine. Therefore, he firmly decided to go to the gaming center that evening. Within a few hours, the main character was in the game center and started a stream there. The audience realized that today he would not run or draw, but have fun. The guy saw a message in the chat about a basketball tournament and realized that if he won it, it would open a direct path to provincial-level competitions. He constantly talked to his viewers, and soon one device was free. This was the most common type of arcade basketball machine and had 5 balls and 4 stages. And during the last 20 seconds of each stage, goals scored count for 3 points, the rest of the time for 2. But in order to seriously throw balls, the main character needed to warm up. First, Batten defined the target to hit as the backboard and the basket in order for him to get credit for the task. He already knew that thanks to this definition, even mistakes would be beneficial. The spectators saw how poorly the guy threw the ball and were outraged by this, but he promised to surprise everyone very soon. Thanks to the speed of his hands, the main character quickly threw the balls, but due to poor accuracy, there were few hits. The board about the completion of the first stage again appeared in front of him, and Batten decided to test the new accuracy. This was only a +1 to the accuracy of the throw, but viewers on his stream immediately noticed it. The guy was so carried away by his new advantage that he didn't even notice how time had run out. He never progressed beyond the first stage, and was more tired from it than from running. If the student continues at the same pace, it will take 3 or 4 hours to complete the assignment. In response to the people from the chat, the main character proposed a competition since they did not believe in him. You just had to guess how long it would take for Batten to update the record on this device. After reading the comments, she began throwing balls one after another into the hoop and backboard at breakneck speed. Within seconds, he scored 981 hits and soon completed the second phase of the sniper mission. A +2 was added to the accuracy of the throw, and thanks to this, the guy finally managed to reach the second stage. Viewers were amazed at such rapid progress in the protagonist's accuracy. While resting, the student realized that to complete the third stage, he needed to score 10,000 points, which is quite a lot. You need to progress smoothly, and with each approach gain more and more points in order to stir up the interest of the audience. Baton set himself a goal of 239 points, so that he would be very close to overcoming the third stage on the machine. His next goal was 251 points to advance to the third stage. It took him all the time to score that many points, but he still managed to advance to the next stage. At this pace, he set goals for himself so that the next one would be a little larger than the other, for the interest of the audience. His fans were surprised at how smoothly the main character progressed because, at first, he threw very poorly. Looking at the scoreboard, Baton saw that he needed to hit the target a couple thousand more times. Of course, the task can be completed tomorrow, but today it will be enough to break the record. This thought pushed the student into exhausting attempts to throw the ball at the target. Watching the speed of his hands and the growth of his points, the spectators wrote all sorts of good and praising comments. In the last seconds, the main character defiantly stopped to score the last goal. When 5 seconds remained, the guy took the ball and began pompously aiming at the hoop. At the last second, the ball flew through the ring, and a congratulation message was displayed that the record on this machine had been broken. All of Baton's fans were happy for him, and some even said that it was better than the NBA Finals. After this record, the main character stood drenched in sweat, coming away from such a difficult game. As it turned out, there were impudent guys in line who were tired of waiting for Baton to play enough. The one with pink short hair ran into the main character, but the student tried to ignore him. And then he sweetly explained that if a guy wants to play, he needs to wait his turn. These words infuriated the aggressor, and he began to tell him that his bro was gaining more than 600 points. Those around him who heard this information were surprised at such professionalism. The guy in the bandana thanked everyone for the praise and expressed a desire to play on the machine where Baton played. The student made a sweet face and took pity because he did not immediately recognize the living legend. Then he decided to give up his device, but only if his opponent could beat the main character. Mike, the guy with pink hair, was very aggressive, but his friend Steve calmed him down. Baton knew he needed time to warm up before the competition, so he said so. Steve said that he could give him a whole year because anyway, nothing would help this loser. Judging by the thoughts of the main character, if he completes the task to the end, then Steve will not have a chance to win. During the warm-up, you need to take advantage of the moment to complete the sniper task as quickly as possible. Steve's friends were shocked by the speed of his hands, and Mike even began to feel motion sick. The guy in the bandana looked at his result and noted that the student had good hand speed. But with such accuracy, it would be foolish for Baton to expect victory. All the while sweating, the main character was sure that Steve would soon change his mind about this. 15 minutes later, a sign appeared with the inscription that the third stage of the sniper task was completed. The student received 1,000 points and the long-awaited +11 to his throwing accuracy. After warming up with a sly grin, he invited Steve to start their mini-competition. Since this guy in the bandana was 100% confident, he took the ball without hesitation. He was very infuriated by Baton's casual appearance, but he knew that everything would soon change. From the first second, Steve began throwing balls at a speed impossible for an ordinary person. The numbers on the scoreboard changed rapidly, and people in the gaming center looked at it with their mouths open. Baton noticed that his opponent had a very interesting throwing technique and decided to try it too. Viewers in the chat have already begun to feel sorry for the main character because Steve scored 600 points. Friends supported him, showering him with all sorts of pleasant compliments. Suddenly, this celebration was interrupted by Baton, who said that it was his turn to throw the balls. His opponent grinned ominously and asked if the student saw any point in this. Mike added that Baton doesn't have to embarrass himself further, but rather just admit defeat and go home. But the main character turned in his direction and said that he was not one of those who immediately runs away. Steve added that he's one of those who believes that a glorious death is better than a shameful life. The student picked up the ball and wanted to test his +13 in throwing accuracy. He set a new goal for himself, which was the center of the throw, and the changes in the system were successful. Immediately after the start of time, Baton tried to throw the balls in the same way as Steve did. Thanks to the accuracy of the throw, he did not have a single miss, which shocked everyone watching. Even the slot machine terminator in a bandana noticed such precision. Viewers on the stream realized that the main character was simply pretending to be a simpleton, because he had already hit the ring more than 10 times and did not touch either the shield or the rim of the ring. When a person makes 5 clean throws in a row, it is called luck, but when all the throws are clean, it is considered a god technique. Mike was already starting to panic that they had underestimated this fat guy. At this time, Baton figured out the accuracy of his throws and increased his speed. At one point, he added +16 to his hand speed, and balls rained down in an unbroken stream. Seeing this sight, Steve was completely shocked that he did not immediately recognize such a monster in him. There were still 6 seconds left on the scoreboard, and the main character had already scored 600 points. The student looked at his opponent with a grin and realized that today he would show him real humiliation. In the final seconds, Batten suddenly missed with a point